to this week's episode of The Performance Cafe. I hope you've had a great week. We are 6 weeks away from the summer holidays in South Africa. And man, it's hot, it's sweltering, and it is really busy this time of the year. And that's actually what I want to speak to you about today, is about it being 6 weeks towards the end, or to the end of Christmas. And you know, so much has happened. 2021, a friend of mine says when she told 2021 it must be better than 2020, she didn't mean it must be better. It mustn't be more of the same. So 2021 was really not the year that I think many people had hoped for. We still saw too much impact from COVID on economy, on society, on health. It was just, wow, it was just so much to deal with, right? So, what I want to talk to you about today is, what do we do with 6 weeks left in the year and exhausted employees, team leaders, managers, executives, and selves? So I often speak of this construct of productive kindness. And the idea of productive kindness is, I want to produce as a manager, team leader, employee even. On the other hand, there has to be a certain level of compassion, of empathy, of kindness in the business to make sure that people actually will be able to show up and do what they need to do. And so today, the question is, with 6 weeks towards December, everyone's exhausted, where to from here? And I think it's about understanding, what do we really need to get done in the next 6 weeks? What's really urgent and important? For those of you who don't know the Eisenhower matrix, it was actually also made quite famous by Stephen Covey, who quoted it in his books. And it says, when I'm deciding how I need to deal and whether I need to deal with a certain task or imperative that's come across my desk, the first thing I ask myself is this important? If it's not important, you get rid of it. And the most important, the biggest way of doing that is by understanding, who is this important to? So for example, someone might send me something and go, it's important that you do this urgently. Well, actually, it might not be in my world. But that, because it's not important in my world, doesn't mean that it's not important in other people's worlds. And therefore, the important thing to ask is, pardon the pun, is that task, for whom does it make a difference? Who does it impact if it doesn't get done? Who is going to suffer if it doesn't get done properly? And so from that perspective, I think the important thing is identify for who it is important and delegate it to them. Not delegate just to get it off your table, but delegate it to someone for whom it is meaningful to actually complete that task. The other thing that the Eisenhower matrix does is, so that if the one axis is importance, then the other one is urgency. And everything nowadays sort of feels like urgent, urgent, urgent. And I think with our always on culture of always having devices and, you know, not being able to switch off all this digital overwhelm we have, is that we tend to sort of overdo how urgent things are, instead of stopping and reflecting and saying, okay, yes, this is urgent, but is it urgent for this minute, this hour, this day, this week, or this month? Because if I can tell you how often I have driven myself over the edge trying to complete something that after the fact I realized wasn't urgent. And I did that to me. No one else did that to me. So I've had to learn to stop and do the check of this minute, this hour, this day, this week, this month. And if it is something that is important to me, but it can wait a week, then it's entirely fine to let it. Because very often what's not on our agendas is time with friends and family, is time for self-care, is time for our own healing. And so often we're like, I don't have time for that stuff. But it's because, A, we don't put enough importance on it to plan it, But even when we've planned for it, the moment someone else tells us that something is important, we tend to rise to the occasion. I see this so often and so beautifully, because often people will say, I only check my emails now twice a day, because otherwise I'm living someone else's agenda. And that's exactly it. That email that comes in, it may be urgent and important to that person, but is it to you? And so I hope that you can create positive movement, but appropriately for the next 6 weeks, and that you will use this Eisenhower matrix, this urgent versus importance, to see what is it that really needs to get done, so that we don't push people who are already exhausted, who've already had a big year, and actually just almost finish them off in the process. And so I hope that you've enjoyed that insert. I look forward to hearing your comments and feedback on that. And of course, any helpful tips that you have on how do you survive for the last 6 weeks of the year. And I hope that I will see you for every one of those weeks until we hit 2022. And I'm quite excited about the prospects there. As always, if you found this useful and you are on YouTube with us, please like and then subscribe. Also, click on the notification bell so that you know when we're going to be sending more videos your way. And then if you're joining us from LinkedIn or Facebook, thank you so much. Please like, subscribe, share, comment, do whatever you can to get the news out there, because we do hope to add some positivity to people's performance and their work lives for this year still. And I look forward to seeing you at the next Perspectives on the Performance Cafe.